everybody, and welcome to Amelia Asks. I'm Amelia Lily, and some of you may know me as a singer or an actress or a TV personality. Now, most of you are aware that I've had type 1 diabetes since I was only 3.5 years old. And I don't know about you guys out there, but I have my good days and I also have my bad days. And I think the hardest thing about having type 1 diabetes is every single day you learn something new about yourself, and it's a challenge every single day. And there is a really big emotional side to, living with diabetes. Now, I cannot thank you all enough for sending over the questions to me, and I am so excited to put your questions over to the wonderful Professor Deborah Christie. Welcome, Deborah!
Hi, Amelia.
How are you? How are you?
I'm really good. Really good. Looking forward to today very much.
I'm so excited to have you on here today, and I can't wait to read these questions out because they're absolutely amazing. But do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first, Deborah?
Yes, certainly. So, Amelia, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I worked at Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children for a while, and then I worked at University College London Hospital, and I've been working with the diabetes team for over 20 years now. And we work with children and young people and families who are living with all of the challenges that we're going to be talking about today.
It's such an honor to be able to speak to you, and hopefully you can give us some great answers for my followers' questions. But let's get started, shall we? So the first question, I've got them all written down here, is someone's asked, why do I still feel ashamed and embarrassed about having type 1 diabetes?
So that's a really good question. And I think that that's really about the way that society doesn't understand what diabetes means. And there's a lot of misinformation around out there. There's a lot of people who don't know that diabetes isn't something that you can give somebody or you can catch. And we end up believing that fake news, actually. And what happens is young people don't like to talk about having to inject themselves in front of other people, and so they feel embarrassed or they feel ashamed if they have a hypo. Teenagers hate having hypos because they say it makes them look silly or stupid. So all of the things that can happen with diabetes that's normal and is no big deal really suddenly becomes really important, and you end up feeling kind of embarrassed and ashamed about that.
Absolutely. And I think, as a fellow diabetic myself, I think growing up, I always felt a little bit like I was the odd one out, let's say, in school. If I was having a hypo in class or whatever, I'd have to leave the classroom and sit on the chair and have a biscuit, and the other kids would be like, why don't I get one? But I've definitely learned growing up with it and having it practically my whole life that it's part of my routine and it's who I am, and I couldn't imagine my life without it. But no, great question, so thank you for that. The next one is, why is it so hard to keep acceptance and good control when you know that is the best thing for you?
So these are really great questions. Let me answer that in a kind of like a funny kind of way. Why don't we all go to the gym every day? Why do we sometimes just decide to eat food that we shouldn't eat but we really like? So we all know what we're supposed to do. All of us, we know we should eat fruit and veg. We know we should eat, healthy food. We know that we should go running or do exercise, but it's hard to be motivated. And if you've got diabetes, then it's hard to be motivated to do the things that you need to do there as well. So it's normal. It's really, really normal not to be able to do all of the things that you have to do. And you shouldn't beat yourself up about it.
Better myself.
Yeah, you shouldn't beat yourself up about it. That's the other thing, because it's so normal. You ask your mum and dad, if you ask your mum and dad, have you been to the gym today? Or have you done have you done something that you know you should have done? And they'll go, oh, no, but I am going to do it tomorrow. But because you can't get away with that with insulin, can you?
Absolutely. Now we'll head over to the next questions now, and actually, I think this is great because mental health is a huge topic at the moment, and and I think being a type 1 diabetic, you struggle every day mentally because you're constantly having to think about everything. What you're next going to eat for your next meal and how many units you need to inject. So, somebody has asked. Do you think type 1s receive the right amount of mental health support? And what should ideally be standard? It's a great question.
Yeah, so this is where I'm going to get onto my hobby horse, because the answer is no. There is no way that young people, children, young people, adults as well, who are living with diabetes every day, get anywhere near the right amount of emotional support. It's definitely got better. So let me say that it's definitely got better. Since the funding to teams improved, more psychologists have been appointed, but we still don't have access for everyone. And that's what it should be. Every single person should have access to properly trained psychologists.
I really agree with you there, Deborah. And I feel like growing up as such a young girl with having type 1, I didn't get the support that I needed. And I was lucky that I had my family and my friends, but nobody really understands it, I don't think, unless you have it yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that there should be more support for us type 1s. It's so important to talk.
Yeah, and you mentioned stigma. You mentioned sort of like mental health and the word mental health.
Yeah.
Young people who are living with diabetes aren't mad. They're not crazy. They don't have mental health problems. What they have is an appropriate emotional response to living with a really tricky condition that's got has a lot of burden attached to it. So it should be reasonable to say, if you're fed up, if you are feeling unhappy, then you should be able to have some kind of support that will help you feel better about yourself and not feel so bad about living with all of these extra demands. It's hard enough just being a kid. It's hard enough just being a teenager without having all the other stuff that diabetes puts on top of that.
Absolutely. And another great question, why is it not standard practice to have sessions with a psychologist in the same way that it is standard practice to see a pediatrician and have your cholesterol checked?
That's a really good question. In some services, it is, but the difference is that people still feel they should have the choice with regard to seeing a psychologist. So in our team, every single young person, when they come for their clinic appointment, they get asked, when you see the doctor, would you like to see a psychologist? Would you like to see a dietitian? Would you like to see a nurse? Because they are available to you. And that means that everybody knows that psychology is part of the treatment team. It's not an add-on, or it's not something that you get sent away to. It's very much part of what your care should be. And that's happening more and more and more now. I think we're getting good guidelines put in place. And the trick will be, is there going to be enough funding to make sure that the guidelines can actually happen? So we'll see.
Fingers crossed, fingers
Yeah.
crossed. And we'll the next question actually is brilliant. What's the best way to conquer mental fatigue from diabetes being in a full-time job while still working my regular full-time job? So I mean, obviously this person that's asked is obviously, it's how I basically feel. It is a full-time job having type 1 diabetes, and then you've also got to go to work and earn a living.
Mm.
So yeah, great question. What's your thoughts on that, Deborah?
So I suppose that's a bit like the idea we have about burnout, about diabetes burnout, which is
Yeah.
really common. It's really, really common that you just get tired. You get tired of counting the carbohydrates, you get tired of measuring your food, you get tired of everything. It's just like this weight on your shoulders. And the things that I would say that you should use to manage those, you can, first of all, there are some good tips and techniques that you can get hold of, and I can send you, Amelia, I can send you a little article which has got 10 top tips to manage diabetes burnout, and I can send that, and then you can share it with your followers, because I think you've got more followers. I think you've got more followers than me for some reason. I don't know why, but but I'll send you that. And some of those tips are things like giving yourself a holiday, being nice to yourself, being kind to yourself, practicing things like mindfulness and relaxation so that you can be in the moment and just relax. There's lots of different tips and techniques. And if you do feel fatigued and you feel a bit burnt out, then read the thing that I'm going to send you, and it's got those 10 top tips, and try and put 1 or 2 into practice. Don't try and do all 10 at the same time, because then you'll be exhausted trying to stop yourself being exhausted. just maybe do 1, maybe do another one, and try.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Deborah. And you know what? I think, just to kind of, just to elaborate on that is, and going back to when I said at the very start, we have our good days and bad days. And I'm really positive about my diabetes. But don't get me wrong, I still have my really bad days where I think, why me? And I think having something like that to read, when you do have those days, and that I could share with my followers and to all these amazing people that have asked these questions, I think would be absolutely great. And sometimes it just takes that little something, doesn't it, just to kind of lift you up.
Yeah. I mean, even just putting a Post-it note on your mirror. So when you get up in the morning and the Post-it note says, smile, you're going to be all right. Just to remind yourself, little things like that can help,
I'm going to do that tonight, Deborah. Thanks for that. Moving on now, we've got a really interesting little section here. So we had a couple of parents send in some questions, which I think is brilliant because, my mum obviously, had me as a child and had me diagnosed at such a young age. And it was a lot for her to take on board, accepting that her 3-year-old baby had got this. And to have to start injecting her. So this is a great section, I think, for parents out there. And somebody's asked, as a mum of a teenage daughter with type 1 diabetes, how do I answer her when she asks, why me?
God. And mine too. It's such a that's a big question, isn't it? And I don't think there's an easy answer there. I think that's a long conversation that needs to start right at the very beginning. And the message always is that diabetes wasn't your fault. It wasn't mummy's fault or daddy's fault. It's something that happens, just like people, get different germs come along and different things happen to people. But that it's not your fault. It's about this idea of blame and fault. It's nobody's fault. And if that conversation starts really very young, when a little age, because actually when you're 3 or 4, you often believe it's something that you've done that's caused it. So little ones have what's called magical thinking. And they kind of think, when they have a fight with their brother or sister and they think, oh, I hate you. And I hope, I hope something bad happens to you. And then the next day, something bad happens to their brother or sister. They go, oh my God, I caused that by my mind because, I wished it. And so a lot of the time, with very little ones, there is that magical thinking. As teenagers, we don't have that. We don't believe that we have that power. But even then, as a teenager, you still kind of have that feeling of, why me? What have I done to deserve this? And so that conversation needs to happen right at the very beginning of diagnosis. There needs to be a kind of an ongoing dialogue about diabetes not being anybody's fault and it being something that we can all get through together, that we're all going to work on this. It's not just you that's got it. It's us as a family, and we're all going to work on this together, and we're going to make it something that's not going to get in our way. We talk about families thinking about diabetes like an unruly dog that's just arrived in the house and is running around like crazy and causing havoc. And what we say to people is, so what's the best way to train this dog? And kids say, oh, you've got to love it, and you've got to be kind to it, and you've got to be nice to it so it doesn't play tricks on you and chew your slippers. And say, well, diabetes is like that too. So what about we think about diabetes and you think about ways you can stop it playing tricks, and you take care of it, and you look after it, and you notice it, and you train it so that it doesn't create havoc and craziness in the house. So you can do things. There are different things that you can do. But I would say this would be one of the times when, if as a parent, you've got a child of any age who is becoming really distressed by this idea of why me, talk to your diabetes team and ask if you can see one of the psychologists that should be attached to the team, because that's the sort of conversation that psychologists can have with families to help kids get over that really horrible feeling. I mean, what did your mum do? What did your mum do to help you, if you ever said that to her?
This is really interesting, actually, Deborah, because, and I think this is kind of linked to the next question that I was going to ask you is, obviously, this next question was, will I ever lose the mum guilt? Now, actually, when I was diagnosed, when I was growing up with it, it was actually my mum that was like, why my daughter? Why's my daughter got it? And I was quite the strong one, let's say, which I think, being so young and having to take all of this on board, I was quite strong dealing with it. And it was more so my mum that was, very much like, why is it my daughter that's got it? So it's kind of like the roles have been reversed, let's say. And I think, obviously this question, will I ever lose the mum guilt? I think kind of links to how my mum felt. She felt like, did she do something wrong as a parent, which was why I got it.
And I guess the other thing is that what's really helpful is trying to see if your psychology team offers groups for parents. So we have groups for parents where they can talk to each other and they can share those ideas and can hear what other parents have done. And at the beginning, you introduced me as the expert. I actually don't think I am the expert. I think you are the expert. Your mum is the expert. And all of the people who listen to you and who follow you, they're all experts because they know themselves better than anybody, better than any psychologist or any other doctor. And so you've got to trust yourself as well. Now, psychologists can help you unlock the answers and the solutions, but actually you are the expert and you have got the answers, and sometimes they just get a bit stuck inside.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate that, Deborah. It is a journey, and I think you still learn about your condition and about your body every single day, no matter how long you've had it. But unless you do have it, it's quite hard to explain what you go through on a daily basis. And that's actually, I think, growing up with it, and we've spoke about obviously like teenagers and acceptance and everything like that, and these next questions actually really link well to that. And someone actually asked me how to balance teenage life with obviously partying and going out drinking and going for meals and sleepovers and having diabetes while still wanting to live a normal life and going out and having fun and doing everything that other 18-year-olds do.
Yeah, and they absolutely should, and they must do not too much drinking and not too late.
Yeah.
But quickly say that for all the parents watching. But one of the things that you as a teenager, you've got a job description. Just like when you apply for a job as a teenager, your job description is to stay out late, to ignore your parents, to do what you like, to phone your mum for a lift home, to wear clothes that make you look special and different, but to be part of the crowd anyway. And all of those different things, the things that every single teenager should be doing in order to become a young adult. That's part of the process. Now, what diabetes does, it kind of knocks you out of the interview process, because it means your parents worry about you more. So this is where you use your friends. You get your mates to understand that you want to do everything, but you need them to keep a little bit of an extra eye on you so that you can do it all, but you can do it all safely. So it's not about stopping taking risks. It's about reducing risk and making sure that you live as normal and as healthy a life as you can do, just as every single one of your friends are doing, but you just have to take a little bit extra care. And that's tough, but if you want to do as much as you possibly can, and there are loads of teenagers with who live with diabetes who've done all of that, and who've been, well, and you're a very, very good example of a teenager who never let diabetes stop them doing anything. I seem to remember there was some pop program you were on at some point.
Yeah, literally, this is this is like a really big one for me, especially. And I get asked about this a lot on a daily basis. Like, how did you cope growing up in the limelight and going to all these parties and events, and obviously trying alcohol for the first time. And I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. Like, I at times kind of didn't forget about my condition, but I did have a bit of a wake up call, let's say, and that I knew that I had to take extra care and check my levels and monitor my levels more so than I ever normally would. And I've never been one to keep it a secret from my followers and everything. And that I love going out, and I love going for a drink with my friends on a weekend when we were allowed. But I love that, and I love socializing and meeting new people, and having a glass of prosecco or a gin and tonic. And I think it's so important that people don't get it mixed up, that just because you're a type 1 diabetic doesn't mean you can't drink or you can't go out and have a normal life. But you're absolutely right, Deborah, is you just have to take extra care. And if you've got a good circle of friends around you, which I've been so lucky for, then you absolutely can live a normal life.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And everybody should hear you say that. And it's just about, the message has got to be, we've got to get that message out there. There is nothing that you cannot do. There is nothing that you cannot do. You just have to work a little bit cleverer. You just have to do it in a little bit of a different way. But you can do every single other thing that your friends can do, but just get them to help you do it.
Absolutely. And my mum always, she used to say that to me all the time, you control it, it doesn't control you. And and I've grew up with that mindset, and I've not had a normal life since I left school. I entered this huge TV show, and it's been 10 years now, and I'm still in this crazy industry. And I'm managing to make it work with my diabetes. So hopefully people you know, find a little bit of inspiration from my story, and that you still can do whatever you want to do, with not having a normal life or a normal job, let's say. But someone going on the same subject of teenagers, someone's actually asked, does many teenagers go through a stage of not taking care of their diabetes? And how do we overcome this for both those who are beginning in the stage and those who have been in it for a while?
Yeah, so we're all very aware, those of us that work to help and support young people with diabetes know that the trickiest time is during the teenage years.
Yeah.
There are physical reasons, medical reasons why this is true. It's certainly biologically harder for your body to manage the diabetes because of things like hormones changing and those sorts of things. But equally, there are psychological reasons, and we've kind of touched on that already. We've sort of mentioned the fact that there's this sort of like this wanting to just be normal and wanting to just do things, the way you want everybody else is doing it. I would say that is the time when you need to start talking about things. You need to get some, if you are really struggling and your diabetes is getting a little bit out of control and you're not managing it, that's when your mum and dad or whoever it is that you're living with, your parents, your grandparents, whoever it is that's your primary caregiver, needs to look out for you and kind of say to you, look, let's get some help. Let's talk to the diabetes team about how we can make this easier for you. You don't always need to talk to a psychologist. It might just be a different way of delivering insulin. It might be a different way of monitoring your blood glucose. It might be thinking about your diet a bit more so that you don't put as much strain on your body. But it might be that if emotionally what's going on for you is also causing a lot of stress, that's going to upset your control. And a lot of people don't make this link for a while. But if you're really, really stressed, your body produces a lot of adrenaline, and that is going to have an effect on your diabetes control. And stress can be great and fun as well as not nice. So we often think of stress as a negative thing, but going to a great party or winning a prize at school or having to do some a competition or anything like that creates the stress response in your body, and that makes it harder to control the diabetes. So I think talking about it, again, it comes back down to talk about it with your diabetes team. Think about different ways of managing it. And if you cannot get on top of it without then think with a psychologist. What else could I be doing? What could I be doing? And you don't be having, again, let me say this again, you are not crazy. You are not mad. You do not have a mental health problem. You are normal, and you have what everybody else has that lives with diabetes. You have that moment when it's just not going right. So try and find somebody who can look into your own solutions. And remember, I'm the expert here. You're the expert here. What can I do? And this psychologist can help me do that. If I can't if everything else doesn't help. But sometimes you just have to write it out.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say I neglected my diabetes as a teenager, but I found it definitely my hardest years. Obviously hormones, as you say, I started obviously my periods, and that plays a massive a massive factor on your levels. And I found that really tough growing up. And I suffered every month with it. I've got it much more under control now, but it's so hard, and I think teenagers do struggle. And myself and lots of my good friends in the diabetic community have suffered in their teenage years, and I think this question was so brilliant for that, and the fact that you've gave us your professional opinion on that, Deborah, is just brilliant, so thank you for that. We have some general questions actually now. We've had some, I still can't get over how many questions we've had. Literally, this is incredible. And this is actually a really interesting one, actually, because I probably would have asked you this myself, Deborah. But why do people living with diabetes have an increased risk of insomnia?
That's a really interesting question, because there's an interesting link with COVID. I don't know if you've read many of the articles about COVID, and COVID's been an increase in insomnia.
Really?
But yeah, there's been a really big increase in people struggling to sleep during the pandemic. So I think without reading all the papers, I'd have to go and read all the papers about that one, because it's quite a specific one. So this is going to be an answer from my gut, rather than an answer from an academic paper. But if a young person came to me and said, I've got diabetes and I can't sleep, I think I would think with them about what are the worries that are going on in their head. I think not being able to sleep is usually linked to anxiety and worry about something. So when you hit the pillow at night, instead of being able to drift off, what happens is your head goes into overdrive and it starts to whir. And you find yourself thinking, what did I do? Did I remember to do that? What have I got to do tomorrow? Oh gosh, am I going to be able to manage that? And you start thinking about all of the things that you've got to do, rather than the things that you need to be thinking about, which is just at this moment in time, am I comfy? Is the room dark? And can I just drift off to sleep? And so I would say that if you're a young person living with diabetes and you're struggling with sleep, it's probably a kind of more of a general, just as a general question, it's a general worry situation. I suspect it's got nothing to do with the diabetes itself. Although if you've got really poor control, then that might, if you're hypo, very low, or you're very high. The other reason that young people struggle to sleep is because they're scared of having a hypo at night, and so they lie worried. They lie in bed worrying that they might have a hypo, and of course that's going to bound to not let you drift off to the land of Nod.
Absolutely. I mean, I've definitely, when I was younger, I've been very open and honest that I used to have like hypoglycemic fits during the night, and I would going to the toilet and, not realizing how low I was, and I used to fall and go into a horrendous fit. So obviously that's had a psychological effect on me as I've got older. And, if my levels are like below 5 before I go to sleep, I panic because I think, oh my God, I don't want to have a hypo during the night. So, I know where I like to be at before I go to bed. And I've also noticed as well, having it the amount of years that I have, is I can really tell when I've had a bad night with my levels. If they've been high throughout the night, I keep getting up to go to the toilet and I just feel really hot and sweaty. So I think it's so important just to kind of, control, like you said. And I definitely, with age and experience, I've got tighter control, but I definitely struggled, once again, being a teenager and in my early 20s. I'm just reading through some more questions. So this is a great one.
Amelia, just before we go on that one, I was just going to
Yeah.
say, if you are struggling with insomnia, there are some really, really good things that you can do. Good sleep hygiene, and this is where the internet really can be helpful. If you look up an NHS website and look up how to help with insomnia, you'll get advice on good sleep hygiene, good habits before you go to bed. Ideas, mindfulness, again, very, very helpful. Doing a mindfulness. Most important, turn those screens off. You've got to turn your screens off a good hour before you go to bed. I know it's a drag, but if you want to try and get some sleep, you've got to turn your screens off, because they will stop you. So it's something that can be fixed, and it's something you can fix yourself. But you just got to practice good sleep hygiene and turn the screens off. Those are the two key things that people will tell you.
I've found actually that if I don't watch like a film in bed before like I want to go to sleep, I've found that I have slept and managed to fall asleep quicker than I would that if I did sit in bed with my laptop and watch a film. So I definitely learned that one whilst in lockdown. This next question is, and I think this is a really important question, and that any type 1 diabetic would ask, is even though I try to live each day as it comes, how can I put aside the fears about, or the reality of the complications in the future?
Yeah, that's another one of those questions, because again, I'm not going to give any easy peasy answers to that one. I think that you can't put them aside completely. You can't completely sort of like pretend that those worries aren't there. I would say, ask yourself how much are those worries impacting on your ability to live day to day. And are they having an effect on your mood, or on your relationship, or on your ability to do your job? And if they are thoughts that come into your head now and again, then talk to, follow your site, go online and talk to other people about those things, and just, share your worries with people and find out what they have done. If they are having an impact on your life, your work, your relationships, again, don't be scared to go and find some help. Don't be scared to go and speak to your diabetes team, because a lot of the time people have kind of got worries that are bigger than they need to be. So we also make sure that we get them to check in with their diabetes team. What is the risk? What is actually the risk? And if somebody has got pretty good control, then the risk of those awful complications are really very small. Now, they're not negligible. Everybody's got the risk. We can't say that there isn't a risk, but the long-term risk of complications nowadays are so different to how they used to be. When we didn't have the right kind of insulins, we didn't understand about control, about range. We didn't have the pumps to deliver the insulin in a good way. We didn't have the monitors so that we could measure and control and keep track of our glycemic range. All of those things have significantly reduced the risk of complications. And a lot of the time, again, it comes back to the old fake news. People have read a horror story or spoken to somebody who has said something to them that is just not true. So check out the facts and talk to somebody. Don't live with that horrible feeling stuck inside you. Ask somebody. Ask Amelia.
I think as well, Deborah, I think we said earlier on, is, it's the lack of education about type 1
Yeah.
diabetes. I think a lot of people are so uneducated about it and don't actually realize the full extent of it. I mean, some people say to me, "Oh, so you're type 1 diabetic, does that mean you can't eat sugar?" And I'm like,
Yes.
"No, I can eat whatever I want, but I have to obviously take extra care, and make sure that my levels are in range." And I think that is the top and bottom of everything. Is you hear one horror story, like you say, and it's always the negative. You don't hear many positives, and you do hear these things where people lose limbs and can go blind. And I think you have to learn about yourself and learn about, what, if I'm doing the best that I possibly can do, I'm in control of my body, and as long as I am taking each day at a time and I'm trying to have the best control that I can with the life that I lead, then that's all that matters. And I think that's why I have got such a positive outlook on diabetes, because I feel like growing up, all I did hear was negativity about it. And I feel like I've managed to turn all those negatives into a positive with age.
Yeah, and we do focus on the negatives. I mean, we hear one bad story and we don't hear the 20 good stories, because the one bad story is the one that gets posted on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the most awful thing happened to me, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But the 20 or the 30 or the 100 people who have just got on with their life, who've, carried on doing well at school, got great GCSEs, they haven't posted that. And so everybody focuses on the really one bad story instead of 100 great stories. And for every one bad story, there are so many more good stories out there. So that's why I think it's really important to talk and ask and say, are you all feeling like this? Is this what everybody thinks? And then people will come back and say, no, not at all. That's not what it's like. You can get on, you can do incredibly well. And you're absolutely right about education. I wanted to just pick up on that. So one of the groups that we run, with children who are just about to go off to secondary school, what we do is we get them to make a leaflet, which is, what would you like your teachers to know about diabetes that you think that they don't know about, or you've realized your teachers don't know about? What do you want? And the things that they come out with, you think that people would know about, but like you said, don't eat chocolate cake. You can't come to a birthday party because you'll fall over. All of those really silly mistruths.
Yeah.
need to be got rid of, and more education for the general public. So important.
No, that's brilliant. And yeah, education, and do your research. There's hundreds of books, and I think talking, like you said, Deborah, is the most important thing. And I think speaking in the diabetic community as I've got older, which is something that I wasn't able to do as a child. But being able to do that now because of the thanks, to social media, I'm able to do that, and it really does help my mental state. Um, Someone's asked here, this is a brilliant question. I've felt like this plenty of times growing up, and it was what to do on days where I take a diet beating. Some days it's hard to show up and do anything when diabetes is running the show.
Well, I want to steal that expression. I love it. A diabeting. That's a
It's
fantastic.
great, isn't
That's a
it? It's
fantastic.
brilliant.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I've not heard that before. I really love that. That's fantastic. You know what? I would say, this comes back to this idea that the one bad thing gets to triumph over all the good. So you have a bad day and it doesn't go well. That doesn't define you. That is just one bad day. And what you need to do is pick yourself up and say, tomorrow is going to be a better day. There were reasons for today being not so good, and I'm not going to let it define who I am. And I'm going to sort myself out. I'm going to get back on the horse. I'm going to get back on the bike. I'm going to get back into work. I'm going to get back onto the program, whatever it is that you've got to get back onto. You get back up there and you get back in, and you don't let diabetes define who you are. One of the loveliest things a young person ever told me, and this is a young woman who is now training to be a doctor. She and I worked together for some time, and she had lots and lots of things that diabetes was rotten to her about. But she said to me, one day I realized that diabetes is just one part of the little jigsaw that is my great, big, wonderful life. It is not the whole picture. And I just love that. And I have stolen that quote from her. I think I gave her I don't know what I paid her, maybe nothing, but I stole that quote. And I've said it before, and I use it on talks. Diabetes is just one tiny little bit of the jigsaw. It's not who you are. It's part of you for sure, but it doesn't define you. So you know what? You've had a diabetes, well, get back up, dust yourself off, and get back in there and get on with your life, and don't let diabetes define who you are. How does that feel? I don't have diabetes. It's easy for me to say. What do you think of?
I think that was such an inspirational speech that you just gave there, Deborah, and I literally will think of that if I ever have a down day. And that there's always, like I said at the start, there's always your bad days, and you think, where have I gone wrong today? And I shouldn't have ate that slice of pizza because it's made my blood sugar spike. But at the same time, if you want to have a slice of pizza, there is ways of doing it. Just obviously speak to your GP and your nurse and everything like that about what's going to work best for you in terms of insulin wise, and timings and stuff like that. But I've had plenty of days growing up where I've had to be camera ready, let's say, and put on a brave face. And on some of those days, I have felt horrendous. And my diabetes is really taking its toll on some of those days. But you know what? I am such a positive person and a strong person. I think, do you know what? Remember what your mum always said to you: you control it, it doesn't control you. Just because you've had this bad day does not mean that every day is going to be like this. And even if you don't have diabetes, everybody gets good and bad days. It's just so normal now.
Yeah, that's another one to put on your post-it note, isn't it? You control it, it doesn't
Yes,
control you. So that's one for the other side of the mirror.
that is. I'm going to write those tonight, Deborah, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to have a little smile on my face. Now, unfortunately, guys, that's all we have got time for today. But thank you so much for all of your incredible questions. And a massive, massive thank you to the wonderful Professor Deborah Christie. It has been such an honour and pleasure to have you on here today and to hear your professional point of view from all the questions. And I just finally want to say, to everybody out there in the diabetes community, stay strong, stay positive, and remember, as long as you're doing your best every day, that's all that matters. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Take care.